This review is going to be a recap of the Latin American revolutions that take place in the 19th century. The question really becomes down to what is Latin America, right? And the answer that you're going to find really is that it is countries that are south of the United States. So you can see a map here on the right specifically, right? Mexico is going to be included in Latin America. You have Central America there in red. You have the Caribbean nations and Caribbean islands. And then, of course, you have South America as well. And they are going to get their name Latin because they are people that speak languages that come from Latin. Other words known as the Romance languages, languages that are derived from ancient Latin from the Romans. So you're going to have Spanish, obviously being the big one, but you're also going to have Portuguese in there as well in Brazil. If you remember, right, really at this point, for more than 300 years, these European countries had been establishing these colonies in the Americas. And the big reasoning for that is, for the mother country to really provide raw materials to bring back to manufacture things that can be then sold outright in either Europe or even to provide new markets in the Americas, in Latin America, anywhere. Thinking back, right, you have the Spanish conquest that took place in Latin America. You've got, obviously, Columbus. You're going to have the conquest of the Aztecs and the Incas. And really after this, you're going to have this kind of rapid decline of native populations that's going to be mostly the result of the diseases that are going to spread, right? But from there, you're also then going to have an introduction of slaves from Africa to fulfill much of the labor need that's going to be necessary from now these native populations dying off from those diseases. And if you remember, right, these conquistadores, they in many cases are going to be given governmental authority, right? And a lot of time these conquistadors, especially the main ones like Columbus, are going to become governors of the areas that they explore and discover. And these people, other words, are going to be known as viceroys, is going to be the title that they are often given as administrators of these areas. So often, these colonial governments are going to mirror the governments at home, right? The way these colonists saw it was that the governments at home worked well enough that they are going to try to do something very similar, right? And Catholicism is going to be a major important factor here. It's going to have a seriously strong influence on the region, right? Most of these people are Catholic, especially coming from Spain, and it's going to be imposed on the indigenous peoples, right? They're trying to fix these. They're trying to make them less savage. They're trying to make them more like the Europeans, right? That's the whole goal at this point, and what they're aiming to do with these natives anyway. And therefore, Catholicism is going to be imposed on them through things like missions and mission work, right? Trying to convert them as much as they can. But another big aspect of this colonial system is going to be derived from the economy. And the economy is going to often be based off of mining and subsequently the export of the precious metals that are then mined, right? So that's the hope, that they're going to be able to actually use these natives to do the mining. And at first they do, but when you have all of these natives that end up dying from diseases, they're going to begin importing those slaves from Africa along the triangular trade that we've talked about in a previous video and earlier in the year. So with all of this commerce and the expansion of markets and things as well, right, we're going to now have some major outposts that are established in Latin America as these major hubs of colonial authority. And you're going to have Havana, Cuba, Mexico City in Mexico. You're going to have Lima in Peru, Sao Paulo in Brazil, and Buenos Aires down in Argentina. These are going to be places that are going to act as hubs and hotspots for activity, economic activity and social activity, all over Latin America. Additionally, in Latin America, a very rigid class system is going to be developed and imposed on the people that are living there. This system is going to become known as the encomienda system. And at the top of this system, you're going to have what are known as the peninsulares, and they are born in Spain. These are European people that actually come from Spain, and often these are people that are going to be kind of administrating the government, especially people like the governors or viceroys of the area, are often born in Spain specifically, right? The next level down, you're going to have what are known as the creoles, and these are Spanish people that are actually born in America, and often they are going to also be colonial officials, but they're not going to actually be allowed to get all the way to the top of this governmental structure. Moving down the list, then you're going to have your mestizos, which are actually mixed European and Native American ancestry and blood. Basically, what's going to happen, right, once you get all these Spanish people moving into the area, you're just going to naturally end up developing and getting mixing of the Native Americans with the Spanish. So moving down further, you have the mulattoes, which are mixed European and African blood. And then at the very bottom of the list, you're going to have the slaves, the African slaves in particular. So when you have such a rigid class structure like we were just talking about, it kind of begins to breed animosity from the people in the middle, right? And these people who are living in Latin America are looking around the world during the 1700s and early 1800s, and they're seeing all of these successful revolutions, in particular, the American Revolution to the north and the French Revolution out in Europe, and they're seeing these successful revolutions and the ideas behind them, and they are thinking to themselves, well, why cannot this be us as well? And the Enlightenment philosophies are going to play a major role in the thinking and of these people in this area, and it's going to really actively push them towards their own revolutions and independence movements as well. So during this time now, during the early 1800s, you're going to have select French, Spanish, and Portuguese colonies that are all going to basically push for their own independence in some way or the other, right? And Mexico is going to get its independence from Spain. Haiti is going to get its independence from France. Colombia is also going to pull away from Spain. And Venezuela is also from Spain. And lastly, the one we're going to be talking about is Brazil, which is going to basically pull away from Portugal. In Mexico, the big figure that you are going to need to know is a man named Father Miguel Hidalgo, and he is going to be known for starting the independence movement in Mexico. And what he is able to accomplish is basically encouraging these mestizos and Native Americans to revolt against these Spanish landlords, and they successfully do it. And as a result, when Mexico gains its independence in 1821 from Spain, he is going to be considered the founder of Mexico. And you can see kind of a painting of Father Miguel Hidalgo down there on the bottom right. Haiti is the next country that we kind of need to know about, and what you need to know is that in Haiti you're going to have a massive slave rebellion. They're going to win their independence and ultimately abolish slavery, and the big person involved here, and the big name that you need to know, is a man named Toussaint L'Ouverture. I'm sorry, I totally butchered that as I don't speak French. But anyway, he is a former slave, and he is going to be the one that leads this Haitian rebellion, and they're going to successfully be able to defeat armies of Spain, France, and even Britain, right? You think about it, all of these countries have a stake in the slave trade, and Haiti was one of the big hubs of the slave trade, so it was in all of their best interest to try to stop this rebellion, but they're not going to be able to do it. And in 1804, Haiti is going to successfully gain its independence in the Caribbean. Next, you have a man named Simón Bolivar, and he is going to be a Creole who is going to lead the revolutionary efforts of a few of the northern areas of South America. Here you can see two maps of South America, one being from the year 1800 and the other being from about 1830. And you can see the big differences here, right? On the left there at 1800, you can see mostly Portuguese and Spanish territories, but as we head over over a few decades here to 1830, you can really see how it has begun to split up, right? You can really see some of these north countries in the north here basically having split away from Spain. You also see a few other of these countries that we begin to know as independent nations, and that's a big deal. The last things you're going to need to know here is something to do with kind of a bit of American history. You're going to have a president in America, a man named James Monroe, in 1823, issue what is known as the Monroe Doctrine. And the whole point of the Monroe Doctrine is basically an attempt by America to actually try to limit foreign interference in the Americas, right? They see these independence movements and they see them as they want to foster this, right? The way they had their own revolution and were successful in America, and they want to see successful, republics being created in South America too, and they want to try to prevent the Europeans from getting any stronger of a foothold down in the South, because the way the Americans see it is those Europeans could be a potential threat to them, right? So the Americans issue what's this Monroe Doctrine, and it's basically saying to the Europeans to stay out of the Western Hemisphere, that any push into the Western Hemisphere could be considered a threat to the U.S. peace and safety, and as a result could be considered an act of war. And basically, if Europe minds its own business and stays out of the Western Hemisphere, then America will follow suit and not get involved in the affairs of Europe. So that is about it for all you're going to need to know for the Latin American revolutions. So I hope you enjoyed, and until next time.